Think you know 60s sci-fi? Think again. For every iconic blockbuster that plastered its name across pop culture, there's a forgotten masterpiece hiding in the shadows, films so ahead of their time that even die-hard fans miss them. Why did some of the wildest, weirdest, and most influential sci-fi visions get buried while others stole the spotlight? Are you ready to question everything you thought you knew about the genre? Strap in, some of these titles might just change your definition of classic. The Day the Earth Caught Fire, 1961. Ever wondered what would actually happen if humanity pushed the planet just a little too far? The Day the Earth Caught Fire answers that question with sweat, fear, and a dash of British wit. Forget invaders from Mars or evil robots. Here, the enemy is ourselves. Two nuclear tests, one by the US and one by the Soviets, knock Earth off its axis and send it spiraling toward the sun. Cue panic, droughts, and a race against time. Director Val Guest uses real London locations and actual Fleet Street journalists as extras, cranking up the realism. The movie's special effects might not have the fireworks of modern blockbusters, but they hit where it hurts, using yellow filters, painted cityscapes, and even a scorched Trafalgar Square to make you feel the rising heat. The newsroom scenes are electric, filled with sweaty, frantic reporters who know they might be writing humanity's last headlines. The ending, genius. Instead of serving up a neat solution, the film rolls out two newspapers. One says "World Saved," the other "World Doomed," but you never see which one goes to print. Audiences were so obsessed, some went back to theaters again and again, convinced there must be two versions. This isn't just a disaster movie, it's a warning wrapped in the realism of everyday life. And as climate headlines today get hotter and hotter, The Day the Earth Caught Fire feels less like fiction and more like a crystal ball nobody wanted to look into. The Man with the Xray Eyes, 1963. Science fiction loves a mad scientist, but rarely has the descent into obsession felt this raw. The Man with the Xray Eyes takes you straight into the mind of Dr. James Xavier, a doctor so desperate to see beyond the limits of human vision that he invents eye drops to grant him X-ray sight. At first, it's all parlor tricks, seeing through cards at a party, diagnosing illnesses, dazzling his colleagues. But as the layers peel back, Xavier's gift turns into a curse. Director Roger Corman pulls every trick in the low-budget book, using painted models and optical illusions to conjure the doctor's haunted visions. Ray Milland, an Oscar winner, leans hard into the role, his haunted eyes and spiraling paranoia turning a sci-fi story into something like a modern myth. The more Xavier sees, the less he can handle, and soon he's tormented by a universe he never wanted to witness. Rumor has it, the film's original ending was even more disturbing than the one we got. The studio supposedly made Corman cut the most haunting line in the finale, adding to the film's legendary status. What survives is still a gut punch, a man undone not by monsters, but by his own refusal to stop digging for answers. The Man with the X-Ray Eyes is a wild, terrifying ride that proves sometimes the scariest thing is getting exactly what you wish for. The 10th Victim, 1965. Long before reality TV competitions or dystopian death games hit the mainstream, The 10th Victim served up a future where hunting people is not only legal, it's primetime entertainment. This Italian sci-fi satire takes place in a world where war has been replaced by the Big Hunt, a government-sanctioned blood sport for fame, money, and glory. The story zeroes in on Caroline Meredith, a seasoned American hunter, and her latest target, the Italian champion Marcello, as their game twists into an unlikely romance. What sets The 10th Victim apart is its wild, pop art vision of the future. Director Elio Petri transforms Rome into a playground of bold colors, modernist buildings, and outlandish gadgets. The fashion is out of this world, literally weaponized bras, chrome-plated accessories, and mod suits that wouldn't look out of place on a catwalk today. Ursula Andress and Marcello Mastroianni play their cat and mouse chase with equal parts swagger and satire. Initially dismissed as exploitative fluff, the film's sharp sense of humor and on-the-nose critique of media violence look prophetic now. The premise inspired everything from The Hunger Games to Black Mirror. The 10th Victim isn't just a curiosity, it's a blueprint for a future we're still running from. Watch this one and ask yourself, how far would people go for their 15 minutes of fame? In this world, the answer is just one trigger pull away. Robinson Crusoe on Mars, 1964. Imagine Cast Away, but instead of a volleyball, you're stuck with a monkey on a lifeless planet millions of miles from home. That's the bold setup of Robinson Crusoe on Mars, a film that reimagines Defoe's survival tale as a gritty, visually stunning space odyssey. Astronaut Kit Draper is marooned on Mars with only a resourceful monkey for company, forced to find food, water, and breathable air on a planet that's anything but welcoming. Shot in California's Death Valley, the Martian landscape is jaw-droppingly convincing, especially considering NASA had yet to send back real images of Mars. Every challenge Draper faces is a showcase of early sci-fi's obsession with, could we really survive out there? The filmmakers went to wild lengths for realism, even consulting with NASA to make sure their survival hacks were scientifically plausible. But it's not all grit and doom. There's a real sense of wonder, especially as Draper explores underground alien ruins and dodges mysterious spacecraft. The monkey brings just enough warmth and humor to keep the stakes human. The result is a survival story that feels as fresh today as it did decades ago, proof that you don't need ray guns or city-smashing monsters to create suspense. You just need the void, a beating heart, and a will to keep moving forward. This is what real adventure looks like when the odds are utterly against you. Quartermass and the Pit, 1967. If you think all British sci-fi from the 60s is polite and a little creaky, Quartermass and the Pit is ready to kick that stereotype straight out the window. This Hammer Films classic launches you into the middle of London, where workers digging a subway line stumble onto something ancient and not even remotely human. What starts as an archaeological mystery turns into full-blown cosmic terror when scientists unearth a Martian spacecraft filled with fossilized insect-like creatures and hints that they've been tampering with humanity for millions of years. Director Roy Ward Baker keeps the tension ratcheted up, fusing intellectual thrills with moments of pure, apocalyptic chaos. The effects are clever, practical, unsettling, and just rough enough to make the weirdness feel real. The story dives deep into themes of genetic manipulation, psychic abilities, and ancient aliens, all before those ideas were fashionable. It's packed with ideas that would later fuel everything from blockbuster movies to conspiracy theories. The climax, a city in panic, a ghostly Martian vision hovering over London, and ordinary people losing their minds. It was considered too scary for TV at the time, and even cinema censors hesitated. But that's exactly what gives Quartermass and the Pit its edge. This isn't sci-fi that holds your hand. It grabs you by the collar, drags you through the dust, and makes you wonder if you've ever really looked at your own history. If you want your sci-fi with brains and bite, this is a must-watch. Prepare for goosebumps, and maybe a few second thoughts about your own ancestry. First Men in the Moon, 1964. Way before Neil Armstrong left his boot print on lunar dust. First Men in the Moon imagined a British flag already flying on the moon and a hidden world crawling beneath the surface. Adapted from H.G. Wells' classic novel, the movie kicks off with a clever twist. Apollo-era astronauts discover Victorian relics on the moon, and we flash back to 1899, where an eccentric inventor, a reluctant writer, and a headstrong woman blast off in a brass spaceship powered by anti-gravity paint. Ray Harryhausen's stop-motion magic is the real star here. He brings the moon's insect-like selenites to life with meticulous detail, making every underground chase and moon cavern sparkle with energy. The movie's budget was tight, but the technical imagination was boundless. Harryhausen personally animated every creature, and the lunar landscape is a psychedelic marvel. The film's sense of wonder is infectious, and it juggles humor and adventure better than most modern blockbusters. Critics wrote it off as a kids' film, but anyone watching today can see its fingerprints on everything from Avatar to Apollo 13. It's the rare movie that makes the moon feel strange again, and it reminds us just how wild early sci-fi could get. If you're tired of po-faced space operas, let First Men in the Moon take you back to a time when the future was a blank slate, and every adventure felt brand new. Seconds, 1966. What if you could become someone else, literally? Seconds is a film that doesn't just ask that question. It digs its nails into your mind and refuses to let go. Rock Hudson stars as Arthur Hamilton, a bored banker lured into a shadowy organization that promises to fake his death, give him a new face, and let him start over as a reborn man. At first, it seems like the ultimate escape, but as Hamilton slips into his new skin, the dream turns into a suffocating nightmare. Director John Frankenheimer turns the screws with fisheye lenses, jarring angles, and a creeping sense of dread. Every shot feels off balance, capturing the psychological horror of losing yourself in the pursuit of happiness. Hudson, breaking out of his matinee idol mold, delivers a performance that's haunted, desperate, and impossible to forget. There's a famous party scene, filmed with real partygoers who didn't know they were in a movie, that feels almost too raw for Hollywood. Seconds flopped at the box office, ignored by critics who didn't get its grim message. But years later, it's recognized as a masterpiece, a blueprint for everything from Face Off to Get Out. It's a warning. Sometimes what you wish for is the last thing you need. If you crave sci-fi that's more psychological than space-based, this is the mind-bender you've been waiting for. Planet of the Vampires, 1965. If you think Alien invented the haunted spaceship story, buckle up. Planet of the Vampires was doing it a decade earlier, with twice the style and half the budget. Mario Bava's cult classic starts with two interstellar ships responding to a distress signal on a foggy, neon-lit planet. When the crews land, things go south fast. Mysterious forces possess the astronauts, turning them against each other as the bodies pile up. It's pure nightmare fuel wrapped in glamorous Italian design. Bava turns every frame into a fever dream, painting alien landscapes with little more than colored lights, smoke, and painted backdrops. The spacesuits are high-collared and bizarrely fashionable, the kind of thing you'd expect to see at a fashion show rather than in deep space. But what really sets the mood is the unrelenting sense of dread. Bava uses his shoestring budget to conjure suspense with atmosphere alone, making every shadow a threat and every sound a warning. The film was shrugged off as B-movie schlock when it premiered, but time has been kind. Planet of the Vampires is now hailed as a missing link between 1950s monster flicks and modern sci-fi horror. Ridley Scott himself has nodded to its influence. If you love moody, stylish, and truly unsettling sci-fi, this forgotten Italian gem will make you rethink the genre's family tree. You've never seen space look this spooky or this chic. The Creation of the Humanoids, 1962. Get ready for a film that looks like a low-budget oddity, but thinks bigger than just about any sci-fi epic of its time. The Creation of the Humanoids drops you into a bleak, post-apocalyptic future where humanity is slowly dying out, and our replacements might already be here. Robots, known as humanoids, are everywhere, performing vital tasks and developing their own personalities. The catch? The last stubborn humans want to keep things pure, but they're running out of time and out of excuses. The movie's visual style is stiff and talky, with most of the budget apparently spent on blue body paint and silver wigs. But don't let that fool you. What unfolds is a surprisingly deep exploration of identity, prejudice, and what it really means to be alive. Characters debate philosophy and morality with the intensity of a late-night college argument, and the script dares to ask the kind of questions that would become central to movies like Blade Runner and Westworld. Released with little fanfare and often mocked for its stagey sets, The Creation of the Humanoids became a secret favorite of Andy Warhol, who called it his favorite movie. Decades later, it feels like the blueprint for the best robots with souls stories. If you want to see 1960s sci-fi thinking way ahead of its time, and you don't mind a little wooden acting, give this one a chance. It'll get under your skin in ways you won't expect. The Last War, 1961. When most people think of 60s sci-fi, they picture atomic monsters and flying saucers, not a harrowing look at global annihilation. The Last War flips the script, painting an unforgettable portrait of ordinary people swept up in the final hours before World War III. The story centers on a Tokyo family whose lives are torn apart by escalating nuclear tension between world superpowers. What begins as a gentle, almost idyllic slice-of-life drama explodes into panic as missiles fly and the world's cities are erased in a flash. Director Shu Matsubayashi pulls no punches, using miniatures, practical effects, and documentary-style footage to bring global catastrophe to life. The city-destroying sequences, achieved with model work and controlled explosions, feel terrifyingly real even today. The heartbreak comes not from the spectacle, but from the small, human moments. Families clinging together, children looking for answers, and a world holding its breath. When it was released, The Last War was a hit in Japan, but barely made a ripple abroad. Maybe the message was too raw, or maybe Western audiences just weren't ready to see the consequences of the Cold War so vividly imagined. Either way, it's a film that hits harder than most disaster movies because it never loses sight of the people caught in the crossfire. If you think the genre can't make you cry, this one will prove you wrong. The Time Travelers, 1964. Step through a lab door and end up in a wasteland. What could go wrong? The Time Travelers is a low-budget marvel that manages to be both wild fun and surprisingly thoughtful. A group of scientists in the present build a portal to the future, only to find Earth is a barren, post-apocalyptic shell. Mutants roam the wastelands, and the last survivors are huddled in an underground city, racing against time to build a starship and escape the dying planet. Director Ib Melchior keeps things moving with creative practical effects, charmingly retro-futuristic sets, and some very inventive time loops. There's a robot assembly line sequence that feels years ahead of its time, and the film's circular ending is a neat trick that would become a staple in sci-fi decades later. Don't expect blockbuster polish. This is a movie that makes its limitations part of the fun, wringing suspense and humor out of every twist. What makes The Time Travelers a true gem is how it refuses to settle for just another future shock story. It's full of little surprises, moments of wonder, flashes of wit, and a final act that's both trippy and oddly haunting. It might not have the big names or massive budget, but this is classic 60s sci-fi doing what it does best, making you believe the impossible with nothing but grit, imagination, and a lot of heart. Nightcaller from Outer Space, 1965. Sometimes a film sneaks under your radar and quietly redefines an entire genre. Nightcaller from Outer Space, also released as Blood Beast from Outer Space, now there's a title, is one of those sleeper hits. What begins as a straightforward alien invasion story turns into a moody, paranoia-soaked mystery. When a meteor lands near London, it unleashes an unseen extraterrestrial force that starts abducting young women under the noses of baffled scientists and police. Director John Gilling crafts a tense, almost noir-like atmosphere with shadowy photography and ominous sound design. Instead of giant monsters rampaging through cities, you get creeping dread, phone calls from the unknown, faces staring out from the dark, and a sense that something terrible is just beyond the edge of the frame. The cast is top-notch, led by John Saxon as the level-headed scientist racing to solve the puzzle before it's too late. What sets this movie apart is how seriously it takes its premise. There's no camp, no self-aware winks, just escalating fear and the unsettling feeling that Earth is being slowly, silently invaded. The ending packs a gut punch, refusing to tie things up neatly. If you think all 60s sci-fi is goofy and predictable, Nightcaller from Outer Space is ready to prove you wrong. Turn the lights down and let this one get under your skin. The Human Vapor, 1960. Now for a film that's as strange and mesmerizing as its title promises. The Human Vapor is a Japanese sci-fi crime story with a twist. The monster is a man transformed into living mist. Through a bizarre scientific accident, a quiet librarian gains the power to turn into vapor and slip through walls, making him unstoppable, tragic, and hunted. But instead of going the giant monster route, director Ishiro Honda focuses on a moody, almost poetic story of obsession and desperation. What makes The Human Vapor stand out is its emotional core. The Vapor Man isn't just another villain, he's in love, desperate, and doomed from the start. The special effects are surprisingly convincing, with swirling clouds of smoke morphing in and out of shadows. Honda, best known for creating Godzilla, infuses the film with style and sympathy, balancing moments of awe with scenes of real heartbreak. Ignored for years in the West and overshadowed by Honda's monster hits, The Human Vapor is a reminder that the best sci-fi can be as personal as it is spectacular. This is a film that lingers, raising questions about power, loss, and what we're willing to become for the people we love. Give it a shot, and don't be surprised if you end up rooting for the strangest hero of the decade. So, how many of these lost sci-fi legends had you even heard of before today? That's the thrill of digging deeper. Some of the greatest visions in cinema history are just waiting for you to hit play. Which of these wild rides will you track down first? Drop your picks and wildest discoveries in the comments, subscribe for more movie mysteries, and share this list with someone who thinks they've seen it all. What hidden classic did we miss?